Welcome to Season 2 of the Pull Hook Golf Podcast. Here's your hosts, Matt Cook and Bobby Brown. Welcome back, everybody, to Pull Hook Golf, the podcast. This is episode number 26 with Mr. Bobby Brown as the co-host. How are you tonight, Mr. Bobby Brown?
Good evening.
And I am your other co-host, Mr. Matthew Cook, your mini tour dropout expert. So if you ever need to know about burnout on the mini tours, I am your guy. But we will go ahead and get started tonight. Now, we've got quite a few topics to talk about. I mean, it was an off week for the PGA Tour, so we didn't have anything going on there. But we did have the Korn Ferry Tour Championship. We're going to recap that. We're going to get some insights from Mr. Bobby Brown here, who is an expert on the Korn Ferry Tour. And then we've got the LIV Golf and the big change there, which is shorts or no shorts. We're going to be talking about that. And also the LIV Golf Boston recap, as well as, there is the PGA Tour, LIV Golf fan dynamic, and I want to touch a little bit upon that later on in the episode. We'll also be talking a little bit about the President's Cup. So without further ado, Bobby, let's dive into the Korn Ferry Tour Championship, which is at this beautiful course that's behind me, which is Victoria National Golf Club in Evansville, Indiana. It is a stunner.
Oh, it is. Remember, I was telling you, if you lived in Evansville, you got a sneaky gem in your backyard. Last week I was raving about how hard I thought that golf course was the few times that I had been there, and they shot the lights out of it. That's for sure. It must have got a little bit wet, and they were firing at flags, and the cream pretty much rose to the top with Justin Sue, who graduated from Southern Cal, and he was. I'll give you a little background on him. He comes off of a Walker Cup team that had these names included. You've heard of a couple of these guys: Will Zalatoris, Cam Champ, Scotty Scheffler, Maverick McNeely, Norman Jeong, Doug Gim. Did I say Colin Morikawa?
No. Wow.
No. Braden Thornberry. That Walker Cup team may be the second greatest behind the Dustin Johnson Walker Cup team. Guess who got the snub for that Walker Cup team that year? He's a good golfer. His name's Sam Burns. You ever heard of him? He's pretty good.
Wow. Yeah.
So Justin was on that team, and he was pretty highly regarded coming out of college. And it's funny, I did that little stint I was telling you about for Norman Jeong for about a month to try and see what the deal was with his game. And he signed a big contract with Callaway for $6 or $7 million. And I asked him, I go, tell me about this Justin So. And he goes, oh, he's going to be on tour, and he's going to be on tour for a long, long time. I go, what's special about him? He goes, he's not afraid. He's got a great attitude. Nothing gets him down. He keeps grinding, and he's just an absolute winner. And I know Norman pretty good, and coming from his lips, I think we saw the real Justin. So he had been trending all year this year. He was getting closer. For people that don't know, there's 50 new members of the PGA Tour, right, Matt? 25 of them came off their points list at the end of the season. And then the top 75 off of that list rallied up with with 126 to 200 on the PGA Tour. They met last week. Last week was the third of 3 weeks that they met, and then 25 more cards were given out. But what's most impressive about Justin is when you combine the two, you come up with a number one. They have a system, you come up with a number one, and that would be Justin. So Justin doesn't have to shuffle, doesn't have to reshuffle. I was trying to clue our viewers, our listeners, into the fact that everybody other than Justin Sue that's a new member starts at 0 points, 0 FedEx Cup points, right, Matt? And after 6 weeks, I believe it is 6 or 7 weeks on tour, they reshuffle by points. So there's always jockeying, and some 13 can go to 1, can go to 2, 2 can go to 13, 49 can move it up to 32 or what have you. So he's in a great position. Not only is he not in a reshuffle category, if I'm not mistaken, I know 100% he gets in the players, and he's also exempt into that little tournament called the US Open. So hats off to him. I got a soft spot in my heart for him because my man that I work for, Troy Merritt, his agent is a great guy named Peter Webb. He has a very small shop, does everything himself, doesn't have any employees. His stable is Troy Merritt, Maverick McNeely, and Justin Sue. So he is pretty loaded with his three guys. So I was pretty stoked about that. There was some drama out there late. I don't know if you got a chance to tune in. I look
Oh, I was
forward to
looking.
it. Yeah, I look forward to it because all hell's breaking loose there the last 2 hours, and there's that dogfight for the 20. It changes every putt, excuse me, or every shot. The one guy's projected at 28, then he makes a couple birdies, and he's projected at 19 or 21, and it's just back and forth all the time. So it's super exciting. I'm going to tell you that if you looked at the list, and I'm not talking shit, but if you looked at the list of the 25 guys that came out of this Evansville tournament, you're going to see a bunch of names of guys that, and I'm not being negative, but I would say probably Matt 13 or 15 of those guys have been there, done that, guys, right?
Yeah.
Michael Glick, Ryan Armour, who's a Bulldog, who's won Jackson, Mississippi's in there. It's a who's who. Ben Martin is in there. I wish I had my list for me. Give me 1 second because
So
you
you've
are
got David Lingmerth, you've got
Lingy.
Austin Cook, Nick
Yes,
Hardy. Let's
yes.
see who else we got
Well,
on
Nick
here.
Hardy was a rookie last year, so I'm not gonna give him a one and done.
Yeah,
Well,
true.
been there, done that because he was trending and he got hurt during the year. Joe Bramlett, Henrik Norlander, right? Ben
Oh
Martin,
yeah.
we touched on. Ryan Armour. Here's a name that's a super nice guy that's been back and forth 2 or 3 times. People don't know about. Nicholas Lindheim is there. Scotty
Hmm.
Harrington is back. Scotty Harrington has got to be 65 years old right now. No, I'm just kidding. I caddied for Scott way back in the day in 2008, a final stage. He was a super bomber then. If you're a super bomber in 2008, you're probably an average hitter now, but his wife is a cancer survivor. He's a great guy.
Mm.
It's a great story. He's back. Bryce Garnett, Brian Stewart, otherwise known as Mr. Miserable, because when you get paired with him, he just hates golf. Fuck golf. Why am I doing this? I'm going to lose my card. I'm going to absolutely lose my card. And I gave you my big hearted neighbor sneaky pick. I've often said this a million times to a lot of people, and I got this from Charlie Hoffman because we were talking about this one day. It's way harder to get to the PGA Tour than it is to stay on the PGA Tour for a lot of guys. And I was talking about Kyle Westmoreland in general because he's a super bomber, hits at 330, 340, and he somehow snuck into the last spot. He was back and forth between 21 and 26, made a birdie on the very last hole. I got to see this, and number 26, believe it or not, not that I'd like to talk about 26, is a buddy of mine that played at Georgia, Joey Garber. You probably know that name. Joey
Yeah.
Garber, if I'm not mistaken, double bogeyed 14, and then he birdied 15, 16, 17, and 18 coming home. And I think he ends up missing by 7 points or 8 points, but
Yeah, he was
it's
just
it's
outside.
yeah, and so he's just outside the number, and he's right back to the Korn Ferry Tour. It's got to be crushing. But we got to talk about my son's stud, Pearson Cootie, who unfortunately had to withdraw after
Injury.
round one. And I'll give you the skinny on that. Apparently, my son was telling me at Ohio State he had hit it in some rough somewhere and had tweaked his wrist somehow, his left wrist somehow, missed the cut, which it probably was a good thing because he got to go home and he rested it for a couple days and he came back out. And Dan said early in the week he could tell something was off. Somehow he made it through the first 15 holes. Dan said just plodding around there, and he was 3 under, and then he hit a drive. Listen, if you go to a tour event and you're a good player, if you can see a guy hit a drive offline 15 or 20 yards, you're like, oh my God, what the hell was that, right? Dan said he hit a drive on 16, I believe, that was like 70 yards
Ooh.
offline. Like they had no idea
That was like DJ
where
Whistling Straits.
what that was only 60, bro. Come on. And it ended up in a bunker. And so he made a double bogey there. I think he made a par, and then he hit it 50 yards left on 18 there, which is excuse me, on 9. He was finishing on the other side on 9, which is a pretty hittable par 5, and hit it way left and tried to gouge it out of there and hurt that wrist again. And Dan said he after they signed their scoring thing, Dan's like, oh man, my man's in bad shape. So he's like, let's go to the range. He said he took about 3 swings, couldn't even swing.
Oh,
Probably said a lot of Hail Marys that night, showed up the next morning. Of course, you're going to go, well, all these guys go and pop for it first before the round. went to hit some putts, everything was fine. Hit a few chip shots, everything was fine. Maybe hit a couple wedges, and he's like, I guess he just kind of lost it emotionally, broke
Oh.
out in tears and just devastated that a guy that's, just turned pro, is so highly regarded coming out of college. And, it just wasn't meant to be. Everybody's path is different, but that's just really bad luck. So, he's gone home to get some treatment and that kind of stuff. I did get an update from my son. He's not feeling that much better. He saw a doctor. I don't know exactly what the diagnosis is, but it didn't sound good. And the bad thing is I know Dan had a long talk with his agent, who is Mike Chisholm, the same family that has Will Zalatoris. And when we swing into the fall, the varsity players really don't play. Justin Thomas and Scotty Scheffler crew, they'll play in like CJ Cup and Zozo in Japan, and maybe one other random one, maybe Vegas or something. They show up in a few of the big ones, but like this Napa field's 156 guys. So everybody gets in. So my point is they go fishing for sponsors exemptions every week. There's 4 sponsors exemptions, right? So Pearson is the top of the list and is looking like he was going to get in a spot into Napa, into Zozo, possibly the 70-man field, 2 or 3 other ones. And then I talked to Dan today, and he's like, man, he doesn't even think that he's going to be able to make Napa. So hopefully he heals up nice and he gets in. I know, total bummer. He gets in 2 or 3 spots, during the fall. So he'll have some golf still going, before the Korn Ferry shows up again. And I don't think they really show up until February or March or something. They start marching through Louisiana. But I'm going to give you the Bobby Brown studs coming out this year. You
Let's
ready?
hear it, Bobby.
Okay. I've already talked about Kyle West. I'm going to give you studs, and I'm going to give you sleepers. Okay. Studs, my Korean, S.H. Kim, is a stud who Micah is now officially working for. Not that he dropped Scott Piercy like a bad habit, but he's dropping Scott Piercy like a bad habit to move for this young Korean. And I've heard and I got more phone calls the last 3 or 4 days from guys saying, this Kim guy, this Korean guy you've been talking about, has the best move I've ever seen, which is no surprise out of Korean, right? They're all rhythm. They all look great. Their golf swings are phenomenal. There's nothing really wrong.
Which Kim are we talking about here, Tom?
We're talking about no, not little fat boy, not fat boy. Fat boy's already established. This is S.H. Kim, who finished, I believe ended up finishing 7th or 9th on the first 25 list. The first 25.
I got you. Sorry, I totally missed that one.
Did you know that he was 2 shots off the lead? And I heard about, Daniel called me about Pearson WD, and so I'm scrolling through the leaderboard and I'm like, where's Kim? I'm going all the way up and down. I can't find Kim. He's 2 out of the lead. And I go all the way down. He WD'd. He got COVID the night before, and I guess was throwing up. And so I didn't get the real skinny from friends with his agent, Danny O, who's Sung Jae's agent. He just told me he was in really bad shape. There was no way that he was going to lie or fake that he didn't have COVID, because that's just not the way to do it. I know some guys would have done that, but he to not play and not have a chance, he must have been super sick. But he's one of my studs, right? So Kim's one of my studs. Justin Suh's one of my studs. Taylor Montgomery is one of my studs. My sleeper picks are Kyle Westmoreland, who I've talked about, and I fell in love with this guy named Eric Barnes. Do you know that name? Not a lot of people do. He's been on the Korn Ferry Tour for, I'm going to say 6 years or 7 years. And he Mondayed into Houston a couple years ago. And when I was working for Sung Jae, we got paired with him. And this is one of those guys I'm like, oh my God, this guy hits it a mile. He hits a low driving cut off the tee. He cuts his irons. His wedge game looked phenomenal. And I was just like so impressed. And I'm like, after the round, I'm like, dude, you have got to get to the tour because you are going to make bank. Your game just reeks of it. He's like, man, I'm trying my best. Every year I get a little bit better. Do you know what he's known for? I don't know if you know the article, but he has 2 little boys at home. I'm going to guess they're like 11 and 7 or 11 and 8. They were following him around during the round. And it's just so cool to see dads out there with their kids following, especially when a guy's going to finish like 25th or 30th in a PGA Tour event, because even before these purses skyrocketed, that's 25, 35, 40, 50, 60 grand. So he's famous during COVID that he went to work at Publix at the graveyard shift from midnight till 7 in the morning stocking shelves.
I
Is
think
that
I
not a
did hear that story.
yeah, is
Yeah.
that not a reason to root for this guy? So Eric Barnes is on
Yeah. That's
my
a name to remember right there,
yeah,
folks. Eric
sleeper
Barnes.
list. And I've also been doing a little research the last 48 hours because I want to know who the dicks are that are coming out, right? There's always a couple dicks. Excuse me. Top of the list, let's go with Brandon Matthews. That's right, Brandon. You heard it from me. I did some investigating. We all know you drove the 18th green there. Did you see his tee shot?
Yeah, that was
Did you see
juicy.
that tee shot? It's
That
like a three.
was.
It's a 370 cover. Granted, the tees, I'm not going to sugarcoat it for him. It's a fucking bomb, right? And he sent this seed out there. It's a 370 cover. I know how far right you can go and how far left you can go. 18 out there is a wicked dog leg left to right with water all the way around, right? So you can Sammy safety and hit a 235 shot out to the left and leave yourself maybe a 7 or an 8 iron in. Medium to longer guys can cut the corner. There's like a 296 cover and about a 330 through. And I know these lines pretty good because I worked for Grayson Murray there a few years back, and he's super bomber, right? And he was asking me, he's like, "What is it to drive the screen?" And I'm like, "Just slow down there, Junior. We're not just slow down." But 30 yards left, it's 320 to cover, and with 20 yards downhill off the tee, Grayson Murray certainly got that. But I was pretty impressed with that tee shot. Everybody was impressed with that tee shot, but Jesus Christ, isn't anybody to talk? He was two off the cut line, and he really didn't have a choice, but he got after it. But Vincent doing some investigating, and he's apparently his shit don't stink already. And he
Oh.
played in like 2 or 3 PGA Tour events. And another big name that I'm not going to say my son gave it to me, although my son gave it to me, is this. Can I call a guy a tool before I've ever
Oh,
even
for
met
sure.
him? Remember this tool bag, Brent Grant. Do you know this
Brett
name, Brent
Grant.
Grant?
No.
Yeah, so he won. I know that he won earlier this year, like the fifth or sixth event. I'm going to back up for a second. If you win on the Korn Ferry Tour and you don't get your card during the regular season, that's like a disappointment, right? Because
Oh, for
especially
sure.
if you've won the fifth or sixth event, you have a head start over everybody, right?
Yeah.
So this Brent Grant apparently likes to fucking fist pump on Thursdays after he makes a couple birdies, right? Which doesn't. The veterans aren't really into that once you get to the PGA Tour. And Daniel says his signature line every time he buries a long putt is he fist pumps up to the hole and he goes, "I was made for this game." So congratulations, Brent. You were made for this game. You got your card. You didn't get it. You didn't get it in the season after winning. I did a little research on you. You played fabulous. You played 22 events on the Korn Ferry Tour. I believe you missed 12 cuts, 11 cuts, or 12
Ooh.
cuts. So he could be a feast or famine kind of guy. So I don't know if he has the excuse me, if he has the proper edge, because that shit doesn't really fly out there that
Mm.
much. Everybody kind of
You
is
got
a
to be
little bit.
consistent.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know who he thinks he's going to intimidate out there, to tell you the truth, but you got to be a little bit more consistent. But maybe he does have the game that's going to get hot for 2 or 3 weeks, and then we'll just see how
I
it goes.
was made for this game. I can't get over that. You surprised me with that one.
Well, I've heard a lot of comments, and I've seen a lot of cocky guys come and go. Most of them go, and we'll just see. But it's funny. When I roll, we're starting right back up again next week, right? I'm
Yeah.
out of here. I'm right. The vacation time's over. This little break we have, we're going right to Napa. It's a 156-man field. All of these guys are going to get in. Some of the guys that finished 126 to 150 on the money list last year. It's not going to be the strongest field. I mean, you're going to have your good players. You're going to have your Webb Simpson and your defending champ Max Homa. There's no easy events on the PGA Tour. Let's
Yeah.
put it that way. Excuse me. And I can hardly wait to walk by the range and kind of eyeball this Brandon Matthews and this Brant Grant guy and see exactly what they're all about and how they feel when they look down the range and there's 70 or 80 other guys warming up that have no fucking idea who they are. So I'm off to the shit. I'm off to the shit talking early. So
I
that's a
like
little.
it.
Am I missing anything on any of those guys? I don't think so. That was kind of my.
I mean,
That's
you
kind of,
summed it up as best as I've
yeah,
ever heard. I mean, the
yeah.
Golf
So
Channel doesn't even sum it up that well.
yeah, are they in trouble right now? I just put it on social media a couple hours ago, and people are bagging the Golf Channel. Well, does everybody think that the Golf Channel is going to be pro live, especially with the Patrick Reed versus the Golf Channel and
That's a good
Brandel
point right there.
and all that kind of stuff? And hey, listen, I'm not a huge fan of some of those people that call the golf or work for Golf Channel. That what's his name? The Eamon, is it Eamon Lynch? I'm not a huge fan of them. I think they could reshuffle up their announcers, especially on PGA Tour Live. We need more guys like Matt Every out there, more been there, done that guys, not this guy. Do you watch PGA Tour Live? They got this like lead guy. His name's the coach. Did he used to be a WWC wrestler or
Yes.
something?
No. He was an announcer. He worked for ESPN afterwards, and then went to the Golf Channel after that. And now he's doing some of the PGA Tour Live stuff.
This guy's never played golf in his life. I'm sure of it. But you know what? After listening to him and that kind of stuff, and I didn't really pull up his bio or anything like that. And in 2022, I can't make the comment I'm going to make, but I'm going to make it anyways. I'm guessing he checks a box.
Yeah, could. I mean,
to have that job.
That is plausible. I mean, it's one of those to where he's a media personality, right? More so than like a golf analyst.
Right.
And he's trying to fill a golf analyst role. So it's not a good fit. And that's why, I completely agree with you on all of those.
Yeah. It's so funny. Listen to him. I'll tell you what, I'm going to go four now. The four people I hate to listen to the most: this coach dude, the check the box dude, I cannot stand. Chantel McCabe, I cannot stand. Who's the other heavier set chick that played on the LPGA? Christina Kim is absolutely horrible. And then there's a fourth one I can't stand either, and I can't remember who the hell it is. But maybe someday, well, if I didn't have such a potty mouth and foul language, maybe I could get in there and do some of that. Matt, that's
no, you. I mean, no, but Bobby, I mean, you're the natural fit, my friend. You're the one with all the tour experience.
Smiley
and everything.
Kaufman is horrible. If Smiley Kaufman wasn't buddies with Justin Thomas and Ricky Fowler, would he even be having a job?
He's not relevant.
And another thing that bugs me about Smiley, I'm getting petty now. When I go sunglass shopping, because I'm a sunglass whore, right? I put on the sunglasses and I want to know if they look good on me. Did fucking Smiley never look at the size of his nose in those sunglasses that he wears? I fire all the time. I got that burner account. I want to give everybody the name of my Twitter burner account. It's so foul and so rude, the shit that I say about some people, that I would probably have somebody knocking on my door within the next 7 days. Bad news to them. I'll be in Napa trying to make some money.
Listen, I think if you are actually doing on course, if you ever stop caddying, which I don't ever want you to, because God damn it, you are good at it. But man, would you absolutely destroy that PGA Tour Live? Like, people would actually tune in to Bobby Brown on their calling shots and just laying into some people. Like, Colt does a pretty good job. Colt keeps it real on there when he's on. Every did a good job when he was on there. And I mean, it's like they need more guys like that.
Aaron Price is another good one too, right? Aaron Price, I don't know if you remember Aaron Price. He's an Aussie that played on tour 2 or 3 times, was a really, really good player. He caddies quite a bit for Chris Kirk. Chris Kirk is the guy that's known that I won't say he doesn't like caddies, but he doesn't like the same face on his bag every week, right? So he changes every 2 or 3 weeks. He brings in a buddy. He brings Aaron Price. He'll bring in this guy. He'll bring in that guy. Don Cooper comes in a lot, who worked for Lucas Glover for 17 years. So there's something about that. I like it. It keeps it fresh too. And he's not a big talker out there, Chris Kirk, but could you see me out there calling in? And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe he fucking airmailed that green.
That's what we need, though.
I'd start ripping on caddies left and right. My biggest pet peeve is people that rip on caddies because the caddies never hit a shot, but I'd be the fucking first one to jump on the bandwagon, right? What's he fucking thinking? What is he thinking? You got anything to say? You got anything to say tonight?
Yeah, I had an idea for PGA Tour Live, which was basically that on Friday, when that guys are like the bottom of the leaderboard, I would love to do that broadcast, right? And just be like, oh, here comes Johnny, and my God, has he not put it in the fairway today? I guarantee this one's going to be a hook to the left. And it's just like that. I would love to do that commentary. I think that would be an absolute blast.
I haven't listened to him in 2 years because I couldn't take it anymore, but I heard a little Bob Menery in you right there. I heard a lot of Bob Menery in you there. For sure. We got a We got a big tournament coming up this week too in Europe, don't we? The BMW at
Well,
Wentworth. That's
that's
like,
been some controversy. I mean, we didn't really
oh,
have that on the list for tonight, but I mean, let's talk about it real quick. Let's dive
I
into this
I'm going to open it
controversy.
up by saying this. I love Billy Horschel. Sometimes I hate Billy Horschel, but I love Billy
Same,
Horschel.
same. And in this
Yeah,
moment, I actually
yeah,
love Billy Horschel because I'm like, man,
yeah,
you are outspoken and you're saying everything that it like from what you and I talk about, right? Like that's what most of the guys on the tour feel, but they're not going
yeah,
to come out and say it.
yeah,
And
yeah.
Billy just says it how it is, and like
Yeah.
that's what I love.
Yeah, I love that. I love that about Billy. I mean, I think he's a whiny baby quite a bit, and I don't.
He can be for sure.
Yeah, he can be, but no, I guess nobody's perfect. And I read and I listened to John Rahm's little 2-minute 56 interview too, and he's just, man, nobody sounds,
Mm.
that guy's smart, right? He's like legitimately super high IQ smart. I'm not saying he says all the right things, but he's not thinking about what he's saying. It just comes out and he just says everything perfect. And he said it. He's like, yeah, man, these guys, this, I'm not mentioning, and he's smart this way. He's not mentioning any names, but they're here for world rankings to try and, you know, Matt, they knew what they were getting into, right? When they went over there, they knew they weren't going to play in any majors. These guys aren't going to fucking get into Augusta. There's no way Augusta's going to let this happen. So, you know,
Did you see
that's
the preemptive attack though on
no,
Augusta
no.
by Bubba and by
Oh,
some of the other
douchebag,
guys? Um,
douchebag.
they all
Yeah,
kind of started coming out with the same thing, which sounds
yeah, of
like it's Live Golf's PR department that is kind of
course.
preempting them to
Yeah,
say, listen, if you don't want to have me, even though
yeah.
who's the other one? I can't put my finger on it.
Phil, was it
Um,
Phil? Phil's running his mouth again too,
it
right?
wasn't Phil. It was Bubba, who is a former Masters champion. So he's obviously has an invite to go back. But he's like, if and this was the only thing that I'll agree with him on. If you don't want me, I don't want to be there. And I forget who else said that. There's one more player that's on Live that said the exact same thing.
Sergio, was it Sergio?
I believe it might have been Sergio. I
Yeah,
think you might be right there.
I love.
And the
I've
thing
always
is,
liked Sergio.
I I would my one thing with this and where I think it kind of fits the fans, but at the same time, it's also a personal opinion on it. I'd love to just see the guys who are exempt into or have the previous championship for the Masters and so forth. I'd
Yeah,
love to
past
see them.
champion.
Yeah, I mean, the four majors, I think those are sacred.
Yeah,
And I do think that the Live guys should have an opportunity to play in those. I don't know how that all works out with world golf rankings and the invitation
yeah,
from the Masters and so forth. The Masters seems like it's going to be the most controversial one,
for
whereas
sure.
like the PGA here's the other thing. It's the PGA, right? That's the
Right.
PGA's championship. Do they allow? I mean, they don't love the PGA Tour. I mean, they even teach it in their handbook. It's
Right.
like they talk very negatively on the breakup with the PGA Tour when Arnie and Nicholas were
Right.
proponents of that. So it's an interesting dynamic. But I would love as a fan if I take myself out of kind of the media personality standpoint and put myself in a
Yeah.
fan position, I'd love to see those guys 4 times a year be able to
Yeah.
compete against PGA
Well,
Tour players,
yeah.
international players, and so forth. I know. And here's the thing: that's not the sentiment on the PGA Tour.
I'm not
It's
disagreeing
basically,
with
hey,
you.
get out
Yeah.
of here.
I thought I read something where Patty, who Harrington, who's another very intelligent guy, if I read it the right way, I'm pretty sure he was saying, he's like, hey, these four majors are supposed to be the cream of the crop. And I think
Yeah,
that's what his way of saying is maybe these guys should play in the majors to see, because it is about the fans, right? It's not about us or our opinions or anything like that, because we're so much on the inside that we know these players the way that a normal fan would not know these players.
exactly.
And my point exactly is, we have, what's the old saying? If you want to insult somebody, what is it? Politics, religion, and I forget the third one. But
Politics
you
and
know,
religion are two good
yeah,
starts there,
those are the
Bobby.
two big ones. There's a third one there. I don't know what it was, but it can't be that important. But when I read this stuff out about, we have a huge there's a nice little Christian fellowship following out there on the PGA Tour, and they go to their meetings, and they have a little Bible study or what have you. Bubba likes to play that card. I know Bubba pretty well. I don't buy it one bit. I think he's using the Bible as a God, I can't use Bible and bullshit in the same sentence, but I think he's over, but I think he's overdoing that with the whole Bible card. And we prayed on it. And my son told me that, and I asked my kids, and they said I should do this and I should go to live. And I'm like, oh my God, this guy's using his kids in the Bible as pawns. I just don't feel bent about that, man. I just
Yeah.
don't feel that it's right. But let's just get back to this. Bubba loves him some Bubba, right? Nobody loves Bubba more than Bubba does. And just, I'm not afraid to say it. I tuned into Live off and on over the weekend, and I almost turned it off when he was out there being Bubba, talking and doing announcing and that kind of stuff with
The
the
encore stuff is a little rough.
He's brutal. They're man, they're horrible. Okay, Farady's Farady, right? Give him his, I'm gonna say it. Give him his Xanax. Give him his
Oh,
Vicodin.
dude, Farady's great. Don't get
Yeah,
me started on Faraday
yeah,
because
yeah.
that dude, no matter what
I
he's on, he's got
yeah.
one liner
He's
after
on the
one
good shit.
liner.
I know for a fact he's on the good shit, And I shouldn't say that because I know he tragically lost his son to, some issues and
Yeah,
stuff
but
like
he's fought it
but he's
too.
fun. But fucking get rid of Jerry Foltz, right? He's a glorified
Yeah.
and no disrespect to the LPGA, but that's right where he fits. He acts like he was some superstar player. The who's the other one? Don Boulay. I like his
Dom.
accent. Yeah,
You
he's a
like Dom?
no, I like his accent. Get it straight. But there's another one on there that I like that's in the booth with him. Who's the third one that's in the
Oh
booth? Don.
gosh. Oh my god, I'm gonna blank on the name.
He
I know
reminds me of
exactly who you're
Peter
talking
Alice a
about.
little bit. He reminds me of Peter Alice a little bit. Remember the old school European announcer, Peter Alice? What's this guy's
Yes.
name?
I
I
don't
think
I can't
I,
think of,
I
I'm gonna
think
pull it up though
okay.
as
Oh
you're
gosh,
going.
get rid of I'm gonna say Asian chick, but get rid of the Asian chick. She's pathetic. What is her name? Do you know what her name is? And then the super
Sue Ann
bomber.
Heng.
Yeah.
Sue Ann. Yeah, yeah,
Call, what? Excuse me. What'd you call
yeah.
me?
Sue Ann. Sue
How
Ann Heng.
dare you talk to me like
Arlo
that?
White is the one in the booth
Yeah,
with Jerry
yeah.
Foltz.
I don't mind. I don't mind him either. But Faraday could be in the booth by himself, right?
With the action going so fast,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
doesn't like it almost feels like there's too many people involved, to be honest with you. Like
yeah. It
you
does.
should have your on-course people and you should have your
Right,
one guy in the studio
right.
and
And that
they're
leaderboard, man,
interacting.
I get confused when they go from one hole to the other. I'm like, where is this guy? I know they have the running leaderboard on the left, but when somebody goes to hit a shot, they'll drop 10 names off, and you're like, where the fuck is so and so? I think there's a little, I think they got to do a little.
Bobby,
They
I've
got
got a lot of friends that are all live golf fans at this point. Like a lot of people like the feel and the look to it, like because
right,
I have a lot of friends that aren't necessarily golfers. Like I
right,
didn't necessarily really grow up in a pure golf crowd. Like I was very much a sports person. So
right.
getting into golf and so forth. So a lot of my friends are texting me and they're like, Matt, do you know what the hell is going on with like this team thing? And like,
Yeah,
how do scores count? How does that team thing work? And then they're getting confused. They're like, hang on a second. It's been saying one hole to play, and I've seen Cam Smith play 3 holes now. It's like,
right.
and they tried at one point to drop in a little line around, like they're still working through some of the, like, this is the fourth event, right? So they're still trying to work through a lot of this stuff. But I
Yeah,
even threw a little recommendation to them. I'm like, listen, if you're going to go into the team side of this and really push the team element, you kind of have to go all in and really
right,
explain it and at least show the graphic all the time to
right.
where you're constantly pulling up the 3 players that matter on that final day and gray
Yeah,
out the fourth player. Even if they're close, like put
yeah,
them as to what their score is and
yeah,
gray them out so that they know that that score is not counting. And we kind of
yeah,
saw it with the aces
yeah,
to where Pat Perez was, his score was counting and he started off really hot. And then there was the Bubba Watson interview to where they don't like each other. Let's just put it that way. They
oh,
they can't stand each other. And Bubba
right,
was asking him questions, and Pat's like, I can't even find the face of my golf club right now, blah blah blah. And it was a very negative like
yeah,
interview. And then
You
some of the
know,
guys even made comments in the booth. Like Jerry Foltz made a comment to where all the other guys were like, "Whoa, hang on a second. Like, do you just said that about Pat Perez? Like, don't think that was the
I wish I
smartest thing."
heard that. I can't stand the motherfucker. But he did career last week, didn't he? He should
Well, he
finish
didn't,
15th.
and then as soon as he had the Bubba Watson interview, he freaking
Yeah.
goes and is five
Well,
over the next like 6 holes.
if you know Pat Perez, yeah, and you do know him the way I know, if you know Pat Perez the way I know him, as soon as that double bogey showed, listen, he doesn't play good under pressure. He just never has played good under pressure. He's a three-time winner, four-time winner. Yes, he kept his card for umpteen years. I know he made a big. When you think a player makes $1 million in PGA Tour, you're like, wow, that player made $1 million. That ain't jack shit,
Not
right?
anymore.
You got to get to what you got to be 1.5 or 1.6 in that range. It means you were somewhat competitive 5 or 6 weeks out of the year. Really, not 1 million. You probably have one good week, possibly two. But it's no coincidence that when Pat Perez makes a double bogey, you can guarantee that there's boxes on that scorecard within the next 45 minutes. And I think he had, well, of course
Oh,
I
it
was
was the
paying.
next 3 holes, Bobby.
Yeah, then
I
they
mean, he
went
went
both.
double
Yeah,
bogey, bogey,
yeah.
bogey, and I think another bogey. I'm not positive on that
Didn't
because you
stop him.
can't really look up this stuff.
Didn't stop him from getting up there and squirting that fucking champagne and everything
Hmm.
like that, taking his 750 grand. But I did get a kick out of the interview where somebody asked him something like that. And it's like, is this a dynasty? And he's like, well, these three are a dynasty, but it's almost like I got the feeling that he knows he could be on the bubble for relegation, or DJ could be shopping him, because like I've said numerous times and we've talked about in the past, when January 1st rolls around, that money goes all to Dustin, to the team owner, and he decides how he divvies it up. He could keep it himself. Is he going to put it to branding and that kind of stuff? Oh, speaking of the team thing,
Yeah.
so they have 4 more events. They have Chicago coming up. I think they have Bangkok, somewhere in Saudi Arabia, and then they go to Trumpy's place, Doral, for the team championship. So there, let me ask you, Matt, because you're more of an expert on this tour than I am, bless your little heart. And there's no individual winner that week, right? It's all team thing.
It's supposed to be that way. Who
Yeah,
knows if
yeah.
it's going to stay that way?
Gotcha. And are these guys okay? So I tuned in with like 5 or 6 holes to go because I didn't know how you the first week or so. I'm just like, how does this team thing work? Is it the last day? And then you explained to me, no, it's 2 scores from this day, 2 scores from that day, right? So now I'm all bitter and I'm all aggravated because I'm like, oh, fucking Perez is actually helping out. Son of a bitch. I'm on vacation for 2 days down in, I'm not going to say Myrtle Beach because we didn't go that far, but Murrells Inlet, right? So I'm on the beach. I got the phone. My favorite thing to do is watch my kids body surf and boogie board for 2 days and not doing anything. I got my phone. It's overheating. I got to hold it like this. I got to cool it off with the ice packs and shit like that. And I'm like, God damn it, Perez is helping out. Well, he didn't end up really helping out, but
No, none of his scores counted the last two
yeah,
events.
what a surprise. And then you read all this stuff and they're like, oh, he's made so and so, and I'm like, God, these stupid motherfuckers don't even know that actually is coming out of his $10 million. So it's not on top of that. I did hear, I don't know if I touched on it last week, but I'm pretty good friends with Keith Sabarbaro, who is the head of the tour department on the PGA Tour, and people are like, oh, well, Dustin won $4 million, but it's coming out of his contract. Back up, folks. I think Dustin's contract's a little different than Pat Perez's. I think Dustin's on top of the hundred and some
I
million
think so
dollars.
too.
He still gets that. But I'm confused on the team thing too, because with 5 holes to go, I thought that they were 4 or 5 shots back, right? And I'm
They
like, oh
were,
my,
but then Patrick Reed showed up.
yeah, that son of a bitch.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, but
poor
he
thing.
ended up
He
going from I think +1 for the day to all of a sudden a couple under par,
he
where
made it.
Perez was
Yeah,
coming down. And so
right.
as their scores were shifting, all of a
Yeah,
sudden they started
he
climbing
made up
back
this.
up the
Yeah,
leaderboard. And
yeah,
then you got Gooch and freaking DJ at the top of the
yeah,
leaderboard, so you got that going
yeah.
for you. But yeah, the first 2 days, so that everybody knows, the first 2 days only 2 scores count
Okay,
from the 4-man teams. Then
okay.
on the final day, to kind of up the ante, that like you just can't win with two players. You can't have two superstars and win with that team, which we kind of saw on the last day because there was the Ironheads, which is made up of Kevin Na and his squad, and
Yeah.
you started to see that like some of the I hate to call them no names, but guys that we're not familiar with, right?
Yeah,
That
you can't pronounce the one guy's name that's
no,
on Kevin's
not a
Yaka
chance.
Bona
That would be part of my
Anamata.
problem if I ever got onto a broadcast, is
Right,
that I can't pronunciate people's names, so I'm not even going to try. But his
right,
team, all of a sudden, those guys started to fade, especially towards the end of the round, and all of a sudden you started to see the team drop. And that's because 3 scores are counting out of the 4 players on that final day. And
right.
that's how the team event works, but they don't do a good job on the broadcast of actually showing you team after team after team as to what players
Right,
you should be paying attention to.
right.
They're so focused on the individual player, and that's where I'm like, you gotta sell out on the team. Like, a lot of people love this team aspect to it. Like, I hear
Yeah.
it from people that aren't necessarily previous golf fans, and it comes up a lot. And it's like, why aren't they talking more about the teams? Because they were touting the teams in the first 3 events. Now, this event was very individualized because you had a lot of guys that were big names up at the top of the leaderboard. You
Yeah,
had Cam
all of them.
Smith up there.
All of
You
them.
had our replacement player, Mr. Anaban Lahiri. I mean, he was pulling a straight up Keanu Reeves out there from the replacement players.
My least favorite guy almost got it done. Oh
He
my.
almost did. He played
Yeah,
unbelievable, and then
yeah.
he didn't choke either. It's just DJ dropped that bomb on the last.
Oh my
But
God, that thing
I'm
was
getting
so.
ahead of myself here with the Live Golf. I mean, we're basically
That's
diving
okay.
into a Boston recap here. We'll dive into the shorts next, but the one thing that I will say about that is the Aces did win the third event in a row,
Fair enough.
and but
Well,
people don't understand how it happened, and that's
well,
part of what they need to do. They got to sell out on the team aspect, because if they do that, then I really feel like it differentiates from everything else that's out there. It was the one unique aspect to them that nobody else has. None of the
well,
tours have the team aspect.
I think from what I've heard that they're really going to market the team aspect next year with the branding and try and make it, obviously they're trying to knock off Formula One anyways, with the big podium celebration and all those goofy caddies up there. Jesus Christ, if I was the winning caddy, I'd be like, I'm not getting up there. I'm gonna go look at my fucking bank account right now.
I love that they still have the aprons on. That's the best. They make them
Well,
wear
they're
the
called
aprons. Yeah.
bibs.
The bibs.
Yeah. Yeah, now they're all wearing the hoodies and they got, did you see Austin Johnson? There's somebody with a lot of money came up with this shaft company. It's called LA Shafts. Have you seen it? Have you heard of these
Yeah, it's like that
shafts?
stability shaft in the putter. Is that right?
I don't even know what it is. It's
I
probably a
think
tree
so.
temper shaft that's fucking painted and has their sticker on it. But he's got the L, so a lot of us veteran caddies make fun of the caddies that wear those sleeves, right? They think they're fucking Kobe out there or something like that, and they got the sleeves underneath, and there's a few of us that make fun of them, and it's like, well, you can tell the difference between a real caddy and a bad caddy, the sleeve guys and the non-sleeve guys, but they're all branded up head to toe. I did read that Wentworth said if these guys were going to play, they couldn't wear anything that had to do.
Yes. Well,
If
no, they asked them not to.
they
But
asked.
there wasn't in the actual letter, there wasn't anything that said they couldn't. It just
Yeah,
asked them politely if they would please not.
refrain.
Because yeah, Liv wanted if you play in an event outside of Liv, they wanted you to wear the branding. So it'll be interesting to see if the guys do it or not.
Yeah, and their website's horrible too, right? Have you noticed their website?
It's not great.
It took me for 4 tournaments. I'm trying to figure out who's winning the team thing, and it finally just hit me last weekend that there's actually a button you can press to see what the team leaderboard is. Next to the individuals. So live recap. Here we come.
Well,
Dustin Johnson.
here's the other thing. I mean, when it comes to the broadcast on YouTube, I
Yeah,
actually really like it, but at the same time, their audio, they got to fix some of their audio issues. A lot of on Thursday, or no, I'm sorry, on Friday. It's Friday and Saturday. I was tuning in on my iPad, had my headphones on, and there's like static as they're talking. And it's like, man, you gotta clean that up. Like,
yeah,
they have a very professional broadcast, but even a buddy of mine sent over a clip and goes, "Can you believe the college intern that's running one of the cameras?" It
right,
was when Matthew
right,
Wolf hit one super tight, and it's all blurred out because he
right.
couldn't zoom in, didn't follow the golf ball until like it was like an inch away from the cup, and then Matthew Wolf ended up making a hole in one out there too. But
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. Very
beyond that,
some monumental things happened. They had their first hole in one on live. Wow, that's
first
huge.
playoff.
Wow, that's double huge. I mean, wow, things are so
That
successful for them
leaderboard,
right
Bobby,
now.
I'm gonna tell you, the
It was good.
leaderboard was really fucking good. It
Yeah,
it
well,
was,
hey, I said it last week. I'm like, this is the
yeah,
best field money can buy because that's really all it is,
yeah.
right? And hey, listen, Dustin had his drop. For everybody that thinks that Dustin's unflappable or he's at the top of his game, he's far from at the top of his game right now because I've already gone. Oh, if he was at the top of his game, he would have still been in contention in majors the last, since the November Masters, but he really hasn't even been sniffing them because he just he's got to the point where he's been there, done that, right? He put in his 15 years of hard work and now he just took the gravy train cash and made another, well, 4 million for the individual and a 3/4 of a million for the team. I mean, that's a nice little, oh God, it makes me sick to my stomach. Austin Johnson just made a fucking $500,000. Oh my God.
At least the only thing that he is contributing, which I was talking about it over the weekend as I was golfing with some buddies, is the fact that he's got the aim point down. But it's hilarious to hear the conversations by him and DJ. No, 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 Bobby, you got to hear this because the conversation is, hey, yeah, you think it's a little outside right? Oh, I
Yeah.
got it, I got it.
Yeah.
That's what you hear back and forth throughout the entire round.
Let me tell you something. I've told you I played 200 rounds with Austin Johnson, and I've gone on record saying as soon as those greens books went bye because Bryson and Dustin were so dependent on those greens books, their putting went in the shitter, and that's my own personal opinion. But I've played with AJ 200 times. He's a fucking terrible putter, and to be a good greens reader, I feel, yeah, he can probably feel shit in his feet better than me. But I can bring up one example. I want to say he was on 14 or 15 and he had some 35 or 40 footer pin high left, and I was listening to the very little comments, and Austin's like, well, let me step here, and he's like 2 inches from the ball, he's like, oh, feel straight here, and it's like, yeah, no shit, it feels a little straight, feels straight, and then I got it going a little left at the hole, right? Did you see that putt? DJ rams it by like 10 feet, right? So now they go through the whole fucking process again. He's stepping in, and there's nothing worse than a caddy saying, "I got it pretty straight," right? Because these guys want to know a tendency, don't they? And I'm
That's
first
what
thing I'm
that's
thinking
what I'm
of,
telling you. There's no specifics when he gives, and I've watched now. There's been 3 events to where this interaction, because they've got the caddies mic'd up, and they're airing this stuff live. And I'm listening to the interaction between DJ and Austin. And I'm
right?
sorry, Austin. I'm gonna pick on you, man. I don't even know you,
Do it.
but
Yeah.
it, you you're you would get murdered on a club level as a
Yeah.
caddy going, yeah, it's just a little bit outside to the right, or yeah, I think I got a break in a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like, what is a little bit? Like,
Yeah.
give me an
Exactly.
actual, like,
Yeah.
show
Yeah.
me, like, is it two
Specifics.
inches, is it six, is it
Yeah.
two balls outside, is it a
Yeah.
cup? Like, give
Yeah.
me those specifics. But
Yeah.
DJ, like you said, he's very much, I wouldn't, I hate to use the term savant because he's a smart dude that
Yeah.
you've clued me into that.
Yeah.
He's not as dumb as he comes across, right?
Right.
He
Right.
plays it down, and
Yeah.
definitely when him and Austin go back and forth, it's not really a back and forth. It's more so Austin kind of gives him a general idea, and then DJ takes over. And that's it.
Right.
And it's
Yeah.
really interesting. Even on the last, when he drops that eagle bomb and it almost goes by 10 feet, it hops up in the air and drops in the hole. Like, there wasn't much conversation, and
No.
yet Austin goes through the whole aim point, and yet
Yeah.
DJ just fucking walks
Well,
around.
that was my point on that 10 footer that he had coming back, where he's like, oh, I got it pretty straight, and I'm like, did he not? It's funny, my 5-year-old sitting next to me on the couch, I go, he's gonna miss this low, and my 5-year-old's like, what? And I go, he's gonna miss this low. He goes, what's that mean? I go, watch this, he's gonna miss it low because it went left going by that way. They got it going straight this time, and of course it misses on the low side. Not that I'm any genius or anything like that, but
Bobby, you're good at what you do. Don't even start with me right
well,
now.
I work for
You're a
I
legend. When I have multiple pros that we have interviewed on here that have told me how big of a legend you are as a caddy, and how, like, Matt Every really made a mention as to your legendary reputation, because he's like, I was intimidated. And this was actually when you lost connection for a second.
funny, I never even, I
He
never
said he
even
was
he never
intimidated.
shared that with
Yeah,
me.
he said he was nervous playing with you on the bag because he didn't want to let you down.
Yeah, well, shit. I would. That's something I never, all my years of caddying, I would never even think about. You know what I mean? I would don't think of myself as legendary, number one, but I mean, I think of myself as, I mean, if I chose a word, it would be experienced, would be the only word. But how
That's
about that?
because you're a humble individual. You're not one of
Well,
these
no,
arrogant
no,
bastards that's
because
out
I'm
there.
not.
Yeah,
Guess
no.
I'm not. You know, I take my pot shots on social media and that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Just because I get so
It's just
frustrated.
good-hearted ribbing. You know what I mean? It's like this is sports. You got to be a
Oh,
fan at
shit
some
talk.
point.
I love shit talking, but how about that putty made going 847 miles an hour? And that's, you know, that thing is probably on the caller. He's probably got 15 feet coming, but he's probably got 15 feet coming back. But the one thing that I noticed that this is not a PGA Tour event, and there is no pressure for these guys because they've already got this big amount of money in their bank accounts, is when are you going to see fuck? Because Jocko Neiman's fiery, right? And Ani Bond's a little bitch, and he's fiery too. That if that fucking guy made a putt to win, and it was a normal, a major or any tour event, those guys would not be hugging him and smiling and everything like that. Ani Bond gave him the, I well, no big deal. I made 1.8 million besides my guarantee. They'd be like, oh my god, that was going fucking 15 feet by. It's like the putt that Keegan Bradley
They'd be
won to win the
pissed.
PGA. What? What'd
They'd
you
be
say?
pissed.
Yeah, they'd be pissed. They'd be bad. It's like, it's funny. I'm really good friends with Keegan Bradley, and I'm really good friends with Duff too. And when Keegan won that PGA in 2011, beat Duff, you remember he buried that putt the kind of the same way that Dustin's did. It went up, and it's like, oh, there's my home, and it came back down, and he wins. And fucking Duff for 2 years straight, every time we played money games together when I was with Dustin, there not a day went by that fucking Duff wouldn't walk right up to him with that big old fucking dip in his mouth and go, tell the truth. How far was that putt going by? Or was that putt going by? And Keegan couldn't take it anymore. Finally, he had to tell him to shut the fuck up. So that's the difference. Remember, I was telling you I had a buddy of mine who went to the, what was Jersey? Bedminster?
Oh
Was
yeah,
that the
yeah. Trump
Bedminster tournament?
Bedminster.
Well,
Yeah.
he's a New York City businessman, pretty successful, and so he goes down to the Boston thing, and he calls me on Sunday night, and he goes, all right, here's the deal. There's people there, they're having fun. It's Boston, it's a sports crazy town. He goes, but can I tell you something? There is no decency out there with the fans whatsoever. They are ragged, they are fucking hammered, they are talking shit. The caddies can't get people to hold still or to shut up. I guess they got the ropes up real close to where you can basically get right next to the player. And he's like, it's you know, it's a different sort of crowd. So if that's growing the game to a different sort of crowd and you're bringing more people in, but you know, let me just say this whole party atmosphere, the PGA Tour actually started that in Scottsdale, which will be coming up to, you know, here at the turn of the
I
new
was about
year.
to
And that,
bring that up, Bobby, because the waste
yeah,
management, it
yeah,
is
they
like
started
they
it.
just replicated what the waste management is to make
Yeah,
it cool,
yeah,
young, and hip. And what I'm going to say is
yeah,
it's working because
yeah,
the
it's working.
fandom is definitely like they have a product. They really
Yeah,
do. And it's
yeah,
a
they
good
do.
product. It still needs to be developed further and it still needs to be refined, which that's going to happen over time, right? If you
Right.
have the right people involved, and like for instance, when Mark King comes in next
Yeah,
year and
yeah,
starts to make it a little bit more, I would say, Greg Norman's trying to make it very hip and very
yeah.
modern and young.
Right,
And that was actually one of the things that I heard about the Boston event is that it was a very young crowd. That
right,
like it was a lot of people in their 20s
right,
and that was kind of the majority. But that being said, it is a replication of waste management. So they kind of
yeah,
took that model and they're like, let's do this for every single event
right,
and make it a party and
right,
make these guys celebrities. And I think the guys that are out there want that celebrity status to
yeah,
where yeah it fits, it's good. It's now I say it's good for the fans that want that, right? For the
right,
purists, for the people that are uber competitive and more of the Michael Jordan, Derek Jeter types, like they're going to frown upon live golf, which is fine because that's why you have two different types of tours. And I think across the board everybody wants everybody just to get over this dynamic of you're the enemy, I hate you, you're the worst thing on the face of the planet. Like on both sides, by the way. So like you've got PGA Tour fans who are just like, man, can't wait for LIV to stop all this BS. You've got LIV Golf fans that are like, PGA Tour is the worst. They're copying everything that LIV does. And that leads us into our next topic, which is shorts or no shorts. Because it's an antiquated rule, in my opinion, on the tour. Now, was there some styles from some guys from the European side that were a little bit suspect with some calf socks? I mean, Lee Westwood, are we waiting for a flood, my friend, in Boston? Was there rain on the forecast?
But as soon as I saw those socks on him, I'm like, oh my God, this reminds me of freshman year in basketball in 1979 when I was riding the Pine. Those were the same socks that I got. Whatever happened to the no-show FootJoys?
So those are out there too. You got the no-shows, though that's more of the classic play, and I think a little bit more actually of a modern look. Like, but I did see, and this is going to put my foot in my mouth over Lee Westwood, is that Adam Scott was out on the driving range with that same look. And I'm like, oh, Adam. But at the same time, Adam can get away with anything that he does. So, like, that works. But when you got the belly hanging over the belt, you've got the calf socks up, I felt like I saw my grandfather out there. I'm like, what the hell is going on? This is like an old senior, man.
I don't.
It was unbelievable.
The whole shorts thing was a big breakthrough for the practice rounds. I get it when it's hot, but, golf's a gentleman's game. I just don't think that was Greg's big deal, right? Oh, we're gonna be the first one. We're gonna be the first ones to do shorts.
It was a good move though, Bobby, because now what's the tour gonna do if they change the rule? Guess what? It's because of LIV Golf.
They won't change that. I will bet. Not everything I got, but I will bet a chunk of my wonderful multi-hundredaire status that they will not change that, because you're gonna wear shorts at Augusta, man. Really? They're not gonna allow that. We can't get 6 inches out of our caddy locker room without wearing our whites. We're supposed to be in our whites at Augusta at all times. You can peel them off and you take them off when you go into the caddy locker room. But if you set one foot out there, they got the secret, Augusta police out there, and they're like, no, Mr. Caddy, Mr. So-and-so, you got to put these out if you want to go out. So, maybe for them. I got a question.
What is your opinion on the shorts, though? Before we get to your question.
I don't like it. No, I don't like it. It doesn't look very classy to me at all. Granted, I've probably never played golf in long pants in my life. I've always played in shorts, and if it's cold weather out, then my rain pants go over the shorts. But my personal opinion is I don't like it, but I think it fits with that tour. And I don't think it's any groundbreaking thing, or it's going to bring more fans to the game. Oh, they wear shorts there. Let's go watch this tournament.
I want to see the style, though, and all the different styles and everything. I think it does add a different element to it, and it's kind of young, it's fresh, and I've heard from different age groups over the weekend. As soon as it was announced, I had about a dozen people that all asked me what my opinion was on it, and just from my inner circle, and it's like, I'm okay with it. It's a little different to watch. It's different to see a guy out there with shorts on and then another guy with pants on. But, from a style perspective, I'm like, this could be kind of cool. I don't know. I'm not against it. I'm not necessarily 100% for it. Time will tell. But it is one of those to where, I know a lot of the guys that, there wasn't that many guys that took advantage of it either.
No, I noticed that. Well, it probably caught him off guard. There was probably a snap decision the night before, really, wasn't it? Because most of those guys like wearing shorts. They all wear them during the practice rounds, and they probably just didn't pack them, or they didn't have their clothing company give their clothing company.
That's a good point.
Time to get them there. And let me just say this: if you go out to a PGA Tour event and watch these guys play practice rounds in shorts, half of them it's quite funny, honestly, to tell you the truth, because they don't have a tan. Not that that's a big of a deal. A lot of them don't have a lot of style, so to speak, in their shorts. A lot of them are very short, and I was raised at the age where a 10 or an 11-inch short, not these I talk shit about my buddy Scott Stallings, but you got your shillelagh dangling.
He's got the 7-inch shorts out there.
Yeah,
They're
I
tight.
bought the vineyard. I live in Charleston, South Carolina, so all you got to do is go downtown Charleston for date night with your lady one night and walk up and down the street next to campus, and you're like, Dick's hanging out right now. What is the deal with the pink belt and the baby blue shorts and stuff like that? So it's the sock thing is a personal thing. I'm not a big fan. It's funny. My son is an up and coming caddy and that kind of stuff, and he's SoCal skateboarder, surfer, grew up and that kind of stuff, and he wears the long socks with the colors on them and that kind of stuff. And I just want to grab him by the neck and go, "This is golf, man. Get your FootJoy or your Nike, ped. Are they called peds? What do you call them? Peds or no shows or
No
anything? I
shows.
can't listen. Nike makes this ankle sock that I wear all the time, and it's got remember the old
Yep.
school Nike logo that had like the little, it's almost a heart, and it's got two golf clubs going through it. And when Dick's Sporting Goods gets those in, and because I go once a week, and I buy up every one of those son of a bitches, I got a bag full up getting ready for Napa, the fifth major next week. And I don't know. That's just me. And I've always made fun of DeChambeau's new caddy, because he's, whether it's a marketing thing or not, I don't know, but he's wearing those things that, they look like spandex, or maybe they're supposed to be better for your muscles, or people travel with those tights on in planes. That was like a big money making rage, because it all comes down to money making. And speaking of DeChambeau's caddy, I was flipping through social media and I saw an interview, because he's fucking big man on campus now. He's probably caddied in 8 or 10 PGA Tour events and 3 or 4 live events. So I guess technically, if your player is the captain of the team, you're the caddy captain too. So I
Oh
was
my
cracking
gosh.
up because he's like, "Hey, I called a caddy meeting with all the guys on our team, and we're going to go walk this golf course together." And I'm like, Jesus, that's all they need to do is go walk it Bryson DeChambeau caddy style, where you need to know absolutely everything. And can't really find Bryson with the search warrant right now these days. Did he top 10 last week? He might have,
No.
or no, he didn't. He didn't. And so, excuse me, I was cracking up because he's like, "Man, I learned so much from these veteran caddies," and he's talking about Tim, the replacement player, Anibon's caddy, how he was using colored pencils, right? And he's like, "Oh my God, I found out he's using colored pencils." And I'll give Tim credit. He goes out, he doesn't have the experience, and I bagged on him before because he is a nervous wreck on the golf course, right? And you can sense when a caddy is a nervous wreck on the golf course, because they're a nervous wreck for one reason: they don't want to fuck anything up, right? And I get that you don't want to fuck anything up, but it also takes away from the aura that you're presenting to your player of confidence, and that you're prepared and very quick answers, not a lot of I don't know and that kind of stuff. But they're making a big deal out of using colored pencil. He's like, "Oh my God, it was a great idea because I've been using highlighters and all that kind of stuff." And I'm like, what do you need? I mean, why do you need all that stuff? You should be able to, how do I say this? Dustin Johnson made a quote that I read a couple years ago, where he got into a tournament late on Tuesday night. He played 18 holes on Tuesday, he did 9 holes on Wednesday program. They go, "Man, do you feel like you're prepared?" And he's like, "Bro, I've been playing golf my whole life. If I can't figure out a golf course in 2 days, I'm in the wrong business." And I feel like that's the same thing with caddies too. Now that there's certain things that you need to know when you get out of position, and that's what most veteran caddies look for. If you miss one left of the world or right of the world, where are you gonna play checkers, or where are you going to play chess to? And I say it to Troy all the time when we get out of position. I go, "We're just playing a little chess here, or a little checkers, right? We're just going to move from point A to point B and try and get to point C in as few strokes as possible." So I don't know. I'm in a shit talking mood tonight, Matt.
I
I'm in
love it, Bobby. Yeah,
I'm in
you're
a
a little
shit
spicy, a little
mood.
saucy tonight.
I know. I'm starting to get sad because now I gotta go. This is not really a break I've had for the last 2.5 weeks, and I'm just, you when you take your when you're home for a few weeks and your boys are growing on you and you're growing
Yeah.
on your boys, and you tuck them in at bed every night, and that you're now all of a sudden you're on the clock, and this is when I start stressing out, because I know that they're going to do. I'm going to the airport in 5 days. Granted, I only got to go for a week, and then I come back home for 2 weeks. We go to Napa, and then we had the President's Cup, and the international team revealed their 6 players.
Yeah,
And
this was a live dynamic too, because you saw a
yeah,
bunch of players not on there, but
that would
the
never made
Golf
it,
Channel was
right?
making it sound like they had to reach out to Ernie Els to see if he wanted to play. No, like that's a
No,
good squad still. I looked
listen,
at the players.
let's look at it. Siwoo.
Yeah.
Okay, Siwoo Kim. We all know Siwoo. It's feast or famine with Siwoo. But Siwoo, I caddied for him in the President's Cup when they got smoked. The internationals got smoked in 2017. He was like the shining star of that because there was nobody. He got beat in singles to Daniel Berger, but he also won a double. He was responsible for one of the 1.5 points I think that the team won. So he is a good pick. KH Lee was a gem of consistency this year. He's sneaky good. I've always raved about Sebastian Munoz. It's either going to be 62 or it's going to be 75. That fits in that format, Matt. Pretty
Definitely.
good. Cam Davis. I've been a huge
Yep.
fan of Cam Davis. He's got all the shots up, down, low. He seems to rise to the occasion when he needs to rise to the occasion. He's still, Ozzy's run a little hot, so he's still trying to get over that whole thing. Well, it'll be interesting to see how he does in this team format. Hey, sneaky good pick, Taylor Pendrith, right?
Yes.
You know,
I
bombs
saw
at
that one. I
320,
was thinking of
300.
you.
Yeah, Taylor Pendrith, and a guy that I know a little bit about from South Africa. He's been playing on tour this year. Let me see if I pronounce it right. Christian Bezuidenhout,
Oh,
who
good.
has an unbelievable putter, unbelievable short game, unbelievable wedge player. So it's not like this is, you know, I mean, I
It's not a
wouldn't.
home run for the U.S. squad.
No, it's not. But then if we went down the whole US list, you would think it is probably a home run for them because nerves have something nerves has something to do with that because when you walk because all of these things are an arena, that first tee at a
Oh,
Ryder
yeah.
Cup and a President's Cup. And I don't want to compare apples and oranges, but it is comparing apples and oranges, the Ryder Cup electricity to a President's Cup. But it is nerve wracking. I mean, I've done a few President's Cups, and I just remember my one thought walking up to the tee was, Jesus Christ, don't trip and fall in front of all these people. That's like my big thing. He's got to hit the shots. You don't have to do anything. Don't fuck up any numbers. And whatever you do, don't make a fool of yourself. So it's great for them. This Christian Bezuidenhout, I can tell you, is he's got a reputation. He had a caddy who's a buddy of his, who's a great caddy. I can't remember his name. He's from South Africa, and I never got paired with him, but I would hear the stories in the caddy hospitality that he just beat the shit out of this guy. So at BMW this year, Damon Green shows up, a buddy of mine. Damon Green is a famous caddy because he worked for Zach Johnson for 15 or 16 years, right? He did all the good. He was a great Florida mini tour player himself. I want to say he's played in US Senior Open, US Senior Opens, US Senior Britishes. I've caddied for him in a qualifier before. He's a great player, but he showed up on Christian Bezuidenhout's bag in BMW. And I'm like, who are you working for, Damon? And he keeps to himself. He sits by himself. He's just kind of an old school guy. He's not in any clique or anything like that. He's anti that kind of stuff. So just on a little side note, it's cool to see that Damon Green is back where he belongs. He's a high profile caddy. He's going to be in a high profile situations, but the Americans are going to be huge favorites. Charlotte is 2.5 hours from my house. I'm almost tempted to. I'm American through and through, right? But when I did that 2017 international, I just fell in love with all those guys and their attitude. And the caddies are, fuck, I'm going to say it, the international caddies are, and European caddies, I mean, Americans don't like them, and it's vice versa, but they grew on me, man, because they're cooler guys, right? They drink a little bit at night, they have fun, they're used to maybe having a headache in the morning, and the American caddies are more puckered up, more businesslike, and obviously the tide shifted there in Australia at that President's Cup, and I guess I just wanted to take my boys, but I was like, man, who do I root for? I got to root for the USA, and then I started thinking to myself, and I'm like, well, I'm not taking my boys to that tournament. Everybody's crowded around 2 or 3 holes, and the next thing I thought, I'm like, man, if I get tickets, I wonder how much they're selling for. Because maybe I'll just make a couple bucks doing it that way and ditch those things. They got to be 300 a copy.
That's your businessman hustle right there, Bobby.
Yeah, no shit, no shit, no shit. So it should be. It should be. Wouldn't it be
It's.
great the first day or the first 2 days they stayed within striking distance and they just careered because they
I
weren't
think
supposed
they
to be
will.
that. Yeah, they weren't supposed to be that close to him in Australia. And granted, they had, Abe Answer and who else? And they had Waco and they had Joaquin Neiman and that kind of stuff. They had all kinds of talent. But you throw in Scotty and Jason Day's out of there. He was getting a little old for it, and Sung Jae and those guys. So man, 3 Koreans on that team, right? Three
Yeah.
Korean golf
It's
is
impressive.
Korean golf is up and coming. That's for sure.
It
So
is.
it should be fun one. It should be
Here's
a
the
fun
dynamic to it, right? Is that, all the pressure's on the Americans,
one. Right.
especially with all the players that were pulled off from the President's Cup squad for the
Right.
international team because of the standpoint that, they're playing on LIV Golf. They can't play on the President's Cup anymore, which I think that really upsets fans too, because it's like they want to see Cam Smith play in the President's Cup. And I mean,
Right.
that's one guy that, as we kind of segue into the fan dynamic here, it's interesting, but I do see that the dynamic that will come into play is that the international group will come out very hot and strong,
Yeah.
especially that first day, and then they may fade away
Yeah.
as it goes on. But I see them being competitive. I don't see
Yeah.
it being just an absolute domination by the U.S. because
Yeah.
what happens when you have a 10-shot lead? It's
Yeah.
tough to close out, right?
Yeah.
And
It
that's what
is.
it's going to feel
It
like
is.
for the U.S. team is that
Yep.
they're expected to dominate. And
Yes.
not only dominate, but to destroy and really step on the throats of the international squad and really make a precedent there that, hey, we are the young U.S. team that from now on, Ryder Cup or President's Cup, we're going to dominate. And I think that's a lot of pressure to hold. It's a lot of pressure
Yeah.
on your shoulders.
And I'll tell you what, there is Quail Hollow to me is a great golf course. Quail Hollow to
Yes.
me was a great golf course before they went in and tweaked it for this President's Cup a few years ago, before they changed a few holes on the front side and they changed 16 and nobody was a big fan. My point is there is no in between. You either love Quail Hollow or you hate Quail Hollow. There's
True.
nobody that's just in the middle. So there's a lot of dramatics that can happen. There's a drivable hole on that side. 16's a beast, 17 of those greens get going hard firm. And this time of year, don't know if that's going to happen because here in the South, I live pretty close. You get those storms, those boomers in the afternoon that could soften things up. But 17's always been a green that it's funny when you get a green that is 38 paces deep, Matt, and you got a pin that's on 32 and you're trying to land it 6 on, right? Or 8 on. So anything can happen there. 18, we've all seen the
Don't
dramatics.
Paul Hook it.
Yeah. Whoa. Yeah. And I'm getting to that 18 tee shot because Rory got it done, but they do have Max Homa got it done there. I believe that was his first win. So we'll see. I mean, and a lot of these international guys haven't really seen that golf course a ton. So that could be a good thing, right? Because they might not have any scar tissue, but like you were saying, it would be nice if they could keep it close and put the squeeze on them. So
I think it will be until the final day. I really do. I think
yeah.
international squad's going to come out very strong initially. And
Yeah.
again, it's going to be because
Yeah.
all the pressure's on the Americans, and then they'll fade away as, experience comes into play, especially
Yeah.
under pressure. And I think that's where the Americans are going to thrive.
Right.
And so it'll be a fun and entertaining President's Cup. I don't know if
Right.
it'll have the exact same feel as former ones, but it should.
Yeah. Yeah, it should. It definitely should. There's no doubt about it. What else you got? What else is on the agenda?
Well, so here's the thing. I polled 128,000 people in the LIV Golf Forum. So it's a very biased crowd, right?
Very.
They're all very much about LIV Golf, and I found some interesting dynamics, but I asked the question, what's the best outcome for the game of golf? And I gave 5 different options, but there was 3 in particular that really dominated the answers. 56% of the voters stated that they want the players to be able to play in both the PGA Tour and LIV Golf and compete in all the majors. That's probably not realistic, but here's the thing. That's from the fans' perspective. And if you look
Right.
at the mission
The
for
LIV
the
fans,
PGA
though,
Tour,
right? The LIV fans, right?
correct. And
Right,
so
okay.
that is definitely one of the big ones. Now, but here's the thing. A lot of LIV fans are PGA Tour fans still. It's
Sure.
not that they're completely one-sided. It's just that they're jaded because the PGA Tour, like to a lot of people, it's not logical to all of a sudden find $200 million, to all of a sudden create all these new programs and all these new
Right.
things that are going on. So like it gives that, here's the thing. A lot of people don't like big corporations, right? It's
Right.
like, oh, they're greedy, it's this, it's that. And that's a lot of the sentiment that a lot of people are just reading into. They're assuming that the PGA Tour is bad because of that. Now, that's on the LIV Golf side. Now, 27% want LIV Golf players to be able to compete in all four majors. So the tours would be separate and they would play in their own events, but they want them to be able to play in all four majors. And then really 8% was the minority group of that, which wants the separation between the two. And for the players to only, this was interesting because 8% is still a decent percentage of these fans. They only want the LIV golfers to be able to compete in the U.S. Open and the Open Championship. So I
Interesting.
found that very interesting as a whole, which kind of brings me to the point that, as I'm looking into the LIV Golf, and I try to add some perspective in there as well, so that it's not just a completely. This is the problem with Facebook. The algorithms make you in a bubble to where only people that agree with your opinions are the
Hmm.
people and posts that you see. So
Hmm.
I want to kind of break that within some of these forums that are so one-sided. So I added some comments in there, and one of the things that I added was on a post that was about the fact that Rory, Tiger, and JT are bitching and moaning about the LIV guys, and if they could just cut it off and look how classy the LIV golf guys are. And you and I
Yeah.
can laugh about that because we know
Sure.
a lot of the guys on LIV and we're like, yeah, they're not the classiest guys in the world on some of them, but there are. Like Cam Smith is a very classy individual.
Sure.
Mark Leishman,
Leishman. Yeah.
everybody loves. Like some of the new additions for sure.
Yeah.
And it made me think, and I started to realize and a lot of the comments that started coming in, because I'm like, listen, look at it from the optics or the lens from like a Rory, a Tiger, a JT. And they kind of got a little bit jaded around the fact that I said when it comes to the PAC, the Players Advisory Council that the PGA Tour has, that these guys are the ones that are building the current day PGA Tour.
Yeah.
And Tiger obviously has had his impact from the tour and growing it to where it is today. But then you look at it through their optics, their lenses, as a Rory McIlroy, for instance. And if you had a business and somebody's trying to do a hostile takeover on your business, you're not going to think very highly of those
Right.
people, and you're probably going to have a pretty jaded view around that. So I added that in there, and sure enough, one of the I one of the biggest things that caught my eye of the comments, because a lot of them were ridiculous and just like not thought out. People's opinions haven't evolved from the very beginning of all of this, but was the international side around the fact that the PGA Tour is so American based and
Yeah.
that it is tied to only America. It's America's tour, and
Yeah.
there are a lot of international people that really look at
Well,
LIV Golf as their replacement for the European tour.
well, that's just really an avenue. I mean, I've been to Europe back and forth numerous times, and you know, you always hear the greedy American comment, right? I mean, that
Yep.
goes with the big USA. I mean, superpower, greed, money, blah, 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 blah. I think that's just a small avenue of that feeling right there. But I will say this, isn't there something in the works for not this current season, but the season after where we're going to have some mega tournaments that are going to I think the word's out that we're going to have maybe 4 or 6 events that are going to travel all
It's
over
gonna
the
be,
globe.
yep. But would
20,
that have happened without Live Golf? That's
no,
the
they
thing.
wouldn't have.
And
They probably wouldn't have.
what I'm seeing is that a lot of international fans are kind of tying themselves to Live Golf as the former European
Yeah.
tour, and it's like DP World Tour isn't getting the kind of light that the European tour did because back in the day, the European tour had all the top European guys, and they
Yeah.
barely came over to the States and played on the tour. And every
Yeah.
once in a while they would. And of course, the 15 events was kind of the Sevi rule to where it's like, oh, Sevi can't come over and just dominate PGA Tour events. He needs to stay over
Right.
there, or else he needs to become a full fledged PGA Tour member and compete in 15 plus events. It's just a dynamic that I want everybody to think about because is it so wrong that both tours exist as long as 4 times out of a year, in my opinion,
Yeah.
we get to see all the best players compete?
And I think I'm okay with that, but until world rank, well, this is they better jump, hope these guys, if they're going to play in the majors, it's only going to happen here in the next year, possibly the next two, unless world rankings change for LIV, right? Because they're not going to be eligible. Past champions obviously are going to be eligible for Augusta and that kind of stuff, but there's other categories to get in. You know, if you finished in the top, I think top 8 at Augusta or something like that, you get in every major. There's a bunch of different categories that people aren't aware of, but that's, with no world rankings, that's going to go out the window for a majority of them. But, you know, and that brings us to this super tournament that's happening this week at Wentworth over there, you know, where it's a super stacked field, and you know, Billy went on record and John Rahm went on record saying, hey, these guys, you know, there's a few of these guys are only over there for that reason. And Billy was, you know, Billy called a spade. He's like, they're not here to support the DP World Tour. They've never been there before. And he actually gave Dum you know, Reed a shout out, you know, the cheater, a shout out, saying that, you know, at least he's come over back and forth. And I'm like, well, of course he's come over there because he's getting a fucking huge retainer to go over there and play. So we will see. I mean, I'm kind of, you know, I'm a little bit like you and Harrington and quite a few thousands of people that are like, yeah, the major should have the cream of the crop there.
I just want what's best for golf, right? As a
sure.
fan, it's like, I think everybody could land in the middle, which that middle is let LIV golfers be on LIV, let the PGA Tour players be on PGA Tour, figure out a way to include the LIV golfers in the world golf rankings because they do have some of the best golfers in the world. And it's not like it is a retirement tour anymore. It's more of a lifestyle tour. And, you know, to your point earlier on, I do have to add this. DJ smiling and laughing in the playoff with Joaquin and Anaban, like, that doesn't happen on the PGA
you
Tour.
Never see that. It's kill or be killed. The competition is just like, hey, no, fuck you. You're not going to beat me. I'm going to beat you. And I said that before from watching at Pumpkin Ridge. Everybody's, you know, all your chitter chatter is the first hole, the first 2 holes. Doesn't matter. It's more on Thursday and Friday, but when you get, excuse me, to the weekend, that kind of shit doesn't happen. I want to bring up one thing. LIV Golf's never going to make money, right? How much money are they losing with these? Forget the contracts.
They're in a huge amount of debt, but the problem is, well, it's not a problem. It is a good thing for them. They have endless resources. So as long as they keep funding it, it's going to exist.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I just think that's, you know, it is what it is when you're dealing with the Saudis, right? They're just going to keep shelling in more money and shelling in more money. And the way things are going, it's a good thing that they only have 48-man fields, right? Jesus Christ. Troy Merritt would be top 10 in the world here if they had 120 man fields, that's for sure. So, you know, we shall see, man.
Well, Bobby, here's the ending, and this is going to be a slight little pitch to all of our audience members and so forth. So Bobby's got the pull hook golf hat. That is the classic snapback. I've got the Brandon Bills pull hook hat, and sure enough, this will be on the website here shortly. This is also the pull hook golf t-shirt. We've got that in the shop. So for all of our audience members that are still listening at this point, you're clearly a diehard, and we would love to have you rep Pull Hook Golf, spread the word, subscribe, leave a review on the podcast platforms, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Spotify. But we love you guys. This is why we do what we do. We want to give you the insights, the real scoop, the unfiltered side. And Bobby, thanks again, my man, for coming on, and thank you, audience, for tuning in.
What do we got next week? Well, we'll do the BMW recap.
We got to recap the BMW. It's going to be a lot of info.
Yeah, and then we have the LIV event coming up. Where are they next? Chicago, and that's the same week. Oh, I'm calling it right now. That's the same week as Napa. So everybody buckle your seatbelts, because I'm sure Chairman Emeritus Greg's going to go on and go, look at the world rankings at Napa compared to the world rankings at Chicago. And I'm like, yeah, Greg, why don't you schedule something against the Memphis or the BMW or something like that, or Memorial or Bay Hill or something like that. So that's going to be his little deal.
He's taking on the smaller events.
Yeah. Of course he's smart that way. That's for damn sure. He catches it on an off week, and now he's got that one coming up versus Napa. And I'm sure, you know, next year he's probably already strategizing his dates on something like that. So thanks for having me on, Matt. Always
Bobby,
a pleasure.
Thank you.
Tuesday nights. All right, buddy. Take care.
Thank you for tuning in to Season 2 of the Pull Hook Golf Podcast.
Make sure to hit subscribe and go to www.polehookgolf.com for more